Okay, hello everyone. We have another student. Welcome to another edition of Workforce Development Workshops that we offer to you every second and third Wednesday of every month. This month, we're focusing on job searching, so that's what we'll talk about today and next Wednesday. So I hope that what you learned today will help you as you search for jobs. And we're here to help you as you search for jobs. So please let us know if you have any questions as I go through the presentation. You can raise your hand on your screen. You can use the chat box, or you can unmute and just ask your question. If I don't have the answer, we have three other presenter volunteers who also help us with the workshops. So either way, we're going to have an answer for you. So there's no difficult question. Please ask us any questions if you don't understand something, or if there's something that you want clarification on, anything like that. Please let us know. So we want to welcome those of you who are here for the first time. We do all of these meetings on Zoom. So just that you connected today, you'll use the same link to connect next week. But today we'll give you some tips and suggestions about how to do job searching. And then next week, we want to give you some time to have some resume writing feedback or some interviewing practice feedback. Some of you might be in that position. You're ready to apply for a job, but you want to make some corrections on your resume, or you want to have some more practice with interviewing. We want to give you some time for that next week. So enjoy part one this week, and then next week we'll close off with a little bit more material and then give you some time to get that practice. Sound good?
Yep.
All right. Let me know if you can see my screen. Here. Okay. Can you see my screen?
Yep.
All right. Okay, so all about job searching. It looks like it's a lot of information, but I think you will find that this will be easy to talk about. So today I'm going to talk to you about knowing your career goals. And if you've come to workshops before, or if this is your first time, you'll notice that we use the word plan a lot. Plan is just as important for job searching. We're going to talk about resume and cover letter help, job searching resources, customizing your resume, how to research companies, apply to jobs with confidence. It's very important. Succeed in your current job. And finally, network. Network is really important, not only in the United States, maybe it's also important in your countries as well. So we'll talk about networking, specifically networking on LinkedIn. And then next week, as I mentioned, we'll have some time to give you some practice with interviewing or resume writing, or both, whatever you feel that you need to help you apply for these jobs that you're applying for right now. Okay. So knowing your goals, your career goals. What type of career do you want? Do you want to work in landscaping? I'm looking at the picture in the middle and I just forgot. Hospitality. Do you want to work in education? Usually that's the first step that when I search for jobs, that's usually the first step that I think about. What type of career do I want? And when I first started looking for my job or career, I also asked myself, do I want to work in this for just a short time or a long time? we always talk about the difference between job and career. The job will help to, a job will help to build your experience, but your career is something that you're passionate about. You have experience in it. You have academic background in it. Maybe you went to college and the university to study for your career, such as in education, which is mine. So I've been in education for 15 years. So I'm happy to say this is my career. Does that make sense?
So far.
So I always tell people, think about the type of career that you want when you first start thinking about or feel that you need to apply for jobs. What is that career that I want to work in for as long as I can? What are your skills? Are you good with computers? Obviously, with COVID, so many things have transferred from in-person to digital. So do you have the computer skills to do this work? You know, if it's landscaping, can you work with tools? Can you work with technology and equipment? Language skills. There's so many different skills that we can talk about that can help you to do different jobs, but you want to emphasize what skills you have in your resume. Okay? How much experience do you have? This is going to depend on what type of job you're applying for. There's a lot of jobs out there that they tell you at bare minimum, you need to have 3 to 5 years of experience to apply for this job. And some of us say, well, I really like the way this job announcement looks. I'm interested in this career, but I don't have the experience. Have you been in that situation? Andre?
Well, yes.
It happens to all of us. I've been in the same situation. Rebecca, how about you?
Could you tell me your question again, please?
So when you're searching for jobs, this is a very important question to ask. You know, how much experience do you have? There's a lot of jobs out there that we apply for them, and one of the things that you'll see when you apply for these jobs is must have at least 3 to 5 years of experience.
Yeah.
I don't, and you say to yourself, well, I'm interested, but I don't have that experience. Has that happened to you?
No. Also, I have a barrier over languages, so I didn't think about it because my English is not so. I want to get a job. I want to find out which career is better for me, but the language barrier is so high. I didn't think about it.
Yep. There's so many barriers. Experience is a barrier. Language, like you said, is a barrier. Location can be a barrier. There's some jobs, they could be 1.5 hours to 2 hours away from your house. And maybe it's a great job. Maybe you have a lot of, you have a really good future with this job, but it's 1.5 to 2 hours away from your house. And that's with no traffic. Some of us ask ourselves this question. I'm thinking about a job, but I don't want it to be that far away from me. Right?
Yeah, I don't want it to be that far away.
So there's a lot of barriers to think about as you apply for jobs, but experience is one of those questions. Volunteer experience. We are the Literacy Council, so we try to serve as many students as we can with language, with workforce, digital literacy, but we can only do so much. We're only 10, 12 people, right? we need the support of volunteers, like the people in some of these pictures, to help us to teach and serve you, right? So some people could say, well, I'm not a teacher. I've never worked in education, but I want to help, right? So we don't say to people, you have to have 3 to 5 years of experience to apply for this volunteer position. If you're interested, we can train you. Does that make sense?
Oh, yeah.
So just because you have a job that doesn't pay you, you can still gain valuable experience just by being a volunteer. It's the same value in terms of the amount of time and experience you have doing that type of work that you're trying to do. Yeah.
Yep.
Planning. Everything is about planning. When we search for jobs, we have to plan in advance in our schedule. When are we going to apply for jobs, right? Because we can't apply for jobs in 5-10 minutes. Think about your schedule. Do you have a husband or wife? Do you have kids? Are you working? Are you studying? If all of that applies, then you have to ask yourself, when am I going to have time to apply, right? Either before or after, or maybe on the weekends. But you have to think about how everything that's in your schedule, it's important, it's a priority, but so is applying for jobs. So you have to plan for when am I going to apply for jobs within my schedule. Do you have professional references? So references can be previous managers that you used to work for in previous jobs. It can be a coworker or a coach or a teacher. Not a good idea to ask your mother, your father, your husband, or your wife. They can be like a character reference, but professional reference would be somebody that can talk about how professional you are as an employee or as a worker. Okay. So this can be a barrier for some people, especially if they've come to the United States and all of their professional references are in their country, right? So you think, well, who can be my professional reference here? That's where you can talk to a teacher, a coach if you play sports, or a counselor if you go to school. Does that make sense? Anybody that can talk about your professionalism. This is who your professional references should be. We should always have at least 2 to 3 references, because when you're applying for jobs, they want to know about you. They want to know if Rebecca is professional, responsible, dedicated worker. Can I call Barbara to ask? I want to be able to call Barbara or email Barb to ask her, can you tell me about Rebecca? I know that she worked for you. Does that make sense? I have to be able to contact these references because sometimes they will call or they'll email, or maybe they'll do both. The Barbs might be able to touch a little bit on this part. Anything you can add on that regard?
Totally understand. Thank you for your explanation.
Barbara, Deb, or Ann?
So are you specifically looking for the email professional?
So if you're, let's say Rebecca's, you're
Yeah, so if it says Bunny Rebecca, that's not professional.
That's true. That's true.
Let's say you're Rebecca's previous manager. I mean, in your experience, does it depend, or do they go the route of a phone call, or do they do the email, or do they do both, or do they even check?
So a lot of times, you will get an email that says we're interested in talking to you. And then you might get a phone call where they say, I'm going to talk to you before I actually interview you. And that is just so that they kind of ask you a couple questions and make sure that they really want to set up interviews, because a lot of times interviews are with more than one person. And so they want to make sure that when they spend time interviewing a person, that it's somebody that they think really has good potential and will work out. And so it's what we call a screening process, where they will decide which people they want to keep going with.
I see. There's a lot of ways that they can contact you. Barb, I think you wanted to say something, but you're muted.
Sorry about that. I would just add that when you think about your references, you should make sure that they're fairly recent. I have been contacted in the past to provide a reference, and I've had to say, I remember in one case, yes, I worked with this individual. That was about 15 years ago. So I can't really speak to what she is doing right now, but I thought she was an excellent employee. But I got immediately the sense that that person who had called was rather disappointed. So it's the job seeker needs to think about who you're going to ask to be a reference, because obviously the company that's interested in you may not want to be talking about somebody or talking with somebody who hasn't had contact with this individual for many years, or you for many years. So think about how immediate this contact is. And if that's the best you can do, you should let that employer know. It's unfortunately, I haven't been in the workforce for the last 10 years, but my supervisor at my last job 10 years ago is, and indicate the name and so forth in the contact information.
Mhm.
So the other piece of that, Barb, to add to that, is you want to make sure that you know what the contact information is, because it may have changed if you haven't worked with that person in a long time, and you don't want to send people on a path where they can't get in touch with somebody that you've used as a reference.
Yeah, that's very annoying.
And I'd also mention that if somebody's going to be a reference, let them know that you want them to be a reference, because somebody could call Barb or Deb and say, hi, Andre is applying for a job and he listed you as a reference. And it takes you by surprise because you didn't know that Andre listed you as a reference.
Well, and there are two issues. The first is you're not prepared. And the second is you might be very happy to provide information about Andre, but you want Andre's permission.
Yeah.
I would never speak to a stranger about somebody that I worked with.
Yep. So 2 to 3 references, email, name, and the relationship to you for a previous job. 2 to 3. Okay. Resume and cover letter. Barb mentioned a great point that if you have a reference that you worked with 15 years ago, maybe the work that you did 15 years ago doesn't really apply to the work that you're trying to apply to now, right? So they're probably looking for the amount of experience that you have in the last 2 to 3 years. So that's why it's really important to really update your resume and your cover letter so that they're both current. So you want to write them from most current to not 15 years ago, but at least within the last 3. If that makes sense. Do you have an account on job searching sites, such as LinkedIn, which we'll talk about, and Indeed? Both of these sites are free. If you didn't know that, now you know. Get an account on some of these job searching sites. Something that I'll show you in part 2 is, do you have a job search spreadsheet? And as you're applying to jobs, it can get a little messy and disorganized if you don't have something to document where you are in your job searching process. So let's say I'm applying to 5 jobs. I can keep track of how I apply to these 5 jobs if I just put down all of this information on a spreadsheet. Who did I talk to? When did I apply? Did I apply? How did I apply? When is my interview? Did I send a thank you letter? All of these things. You can keep track of this in a spreadsheet so that by the time somebody says, Rebecca, I'd like to offer you a job. Now you can, now you can go back and update your spreadsheet and say, I got this job. Does that make sense?
Absolutely.
We'll get into that in part 2. And another thing that it may seem simple, but it's very important that we do is that, do we have a professional email address? And the easiest way to do this is your first name and your last name. Of course, if your name is Thomas Smith, there's a lot of Thomas Smiths, right? So you have to add a few numbers in there or change the way you write your email username. But the more professional your email, the better. Any questions on that so far?
No.
Good. All right. So resume and cover letter help, which we help you to do with these workshops. You want to proofread your resume. Check for grammar mistakes. Check for spelling mistakes. You want to see that your resume, well, let me ask you this question. How many pages should your resume be?
Up to 2.
Up to 2 pages, right? Not 3 or 4. But in some cases, and the Barbs can add to this, in some cases, depending on your experience, sometimes it is okay if your resume is 3 to 4 pages. But I think that's a case-by-case basis, because most managers would prefer that you submit a resume that's 1 or 2 pages max. Am I right, Barb?
I would agree completely with you. If you think of from the manager's perspective, busy person, doesn't have a lot of time, a lot of words on a page is just a lot of work to plow through. So unless there's a compelling, a very important reason, you want to highlight what you can do, and usually less words, more white space is the best way for the information to jump out at him or her, so that that manager is like, oh, I got it. This person is of interest to me. Goes into the pile of interesting possibility.
Yep.
When they're being, and obviously there are certainly screening processes now in many companies. You certainly don't. You don't want the computer to get confused because there are just so many words. They're sorting by whatever standards they have. So,
yep.
If you're a doctor, it's a different story, but that's, or a professor at a university.
Maybe a lawyer as well. But,
yeah.
Well, can I just say something, Ronald? Yep. So I would say if it's any kind of business, if it's not what Barb just said, or you just said of a doctor or a lawyer, or a professor, or one of the kinds of professions where you do it as a curriculum vitae, a CV instead of a resume, then you should never, ever, ever be more than 2 pages, because the idea of the resume is to interest somebody in wanting to talk to you more and find out more. It's not to tell your whole life story.
Yep.
Also, if I might add, it does show that you can be very well organized, that you know how to prioritize. I mean, it says a lot about you if your resume sticks to what is most important, and it says it well and it says it clearly. You know, one of the problems with going on and on for pages is that then you seem like someone who rambles and who isn't particularly well organized. So really, really remember that the resume is your initial go at, you know, making yourself appear somebody that you want to be. So that's why we really talk, you know, in our resume writing workshops, we really talk about, you know, focus on what's important. Exactly as was just said, your whole life history is not important right now, but you want to come across as being well organized. If your resume goes on for so many pages that really nobody can take in all the details, that doesn't present that that's who you are.
Yep. Couldn't agree more. First impression is key. That's why we look for the resume that grabs our attention. And here I can see 3 people that I recognize. I see me, Ann, and Deb. But if you can see from the example in the screenshot here, here's a resume that it's very much organized in a way that grabs my attention. I see skills, I see education, and I see experience and objective. Very simple, very clean, organized, 1-page maximum. So if I get this one versus other resumes that have 2 pages or 3 pages, my eyes are going to be impressed by the one that takes me the least amount of time to review. And it's done in a very professional way. Cover letters, we hate to write cover letters, but sometimes they're necessary. It's part of the job application process. Some jobs will ask you to write them, some of them won't, although a lot of people will tell you that if the job application is asking for your resume only, but you go ahead and write the cover letter, they will value that from you, and maybe they might choose you over the other candidates because it shows that you're very interested in the job. Does that make sense? Yep.
Yes.
So that's a good question to ask the Barbs, because sometimes I think managers don't put the inclusion of a cover letter for a reason. Maybe they really don't want a cover letter. But if you go ahead and submit that cover letter, does that raise or lower your chances of getting that job?
Well, when I was a manager, I think the answer would have been, it depends on what the message is in the cover letter. If it is simply a restatement of what's on the resume, then it isn't of much value. It's just another piece of paper. If there is something interesting, relevant, compelling information that is in the cover letter that is helping me to understand the value of the resume, then that might be a useful way of, in effect, setting the reader up for understanding the resume better. And certainly a poorly written letter is not the answer. It'd be better just to send in just, you know, the resume itself without the letter than a messy letter or a letter that is simply saying what you're also saying in the resume. I'd say, you know, because just think about the people who have to process the paper. And they're busy, and so tell me why you're taking up my time. Unfortunately, that may be the perspective of the manager. Do I sound like a terrible manager right now?
No, but it's just something to think about as you're applying, right? I mean, it's like, do I really want them to? I want to impress them, and you know, you're selling yourself. You're saying to this company, I am the right person for this job. You didn't ask me for a cover letter, but here's why I am a good match for this company, because I'm really motivated to apply for this job. So
I think that's a really good point, Raul. If the cover letter specifies why you believe there's a very reason for your candidacy, because it may not be quite as clear in the resume, because the resume has to be structured, nice, neat, and parallel construction and so forth, that it might not jump out. But if you're, I don't know, you're able to say, I'm making this right off the top of my head. I was thrilled to hear about this particular job. I had a friend who did it. I was so fascinated by his experiences. I'm hoping that you will consider my application and my resume, which is attached, sincerely, that kind of thing. So it's like, oh, here's somebody who actually knows about this job, is terribly interested in it. And now I understand why I should pay maybe a little more attention to this particular resume.
Yep. Thank you, Barb.
Raul, I think
Madam?
too, you have to pay attention to what they ask for. So if they say, please send a resume, that's one thing, and you can maybe send something else with it. If it says only send a resume, they're making it clear that they really at this stage do not want more paperwork, perhaps because it's a big entity and it's streamlined, and things go to a certain place and they just can't deal with the extra paperwork at the moment. So I think too, it's be very aware of what you're reading and what you think the expectation is, because this isn't the moment to annoy somebody before you even get your resume in.
Very good point.
Be aware.
Yep. Very good point.
Yeah, I would add to that it is not always a good thing, and it looks, a lot of cover letters that I saw when I was managing were just basically, I'm interested in this job, here's my resume, and there was no value to it. And so, like everybody else has been saying, unless you've got a really good reason to write a cover letter, I'm not sure that it adds very much.
Yeah, agreed. Thank you, Barb. Job fairs, career fairs, they are still happening. They were before COVID. These would be very well attended events, hundreds of people, lots of companies. Now we have virtual job fairs and career fairs that happen on Zoom, Google Meet, even Microsoft Teams. These are very important events that you can go to. Sometimes you have to register for them. You might even have to pay a fee for them, but generally they're pretty free to attend. Some people go the old route of talking to a manager in person. When you go to places like Safeway or a restaurant or any store, retail store that says we're hiring, you can ask to talk to the manager, and you can say, I see that you're hiring. Can I talk to you for a few minutes? I'm interested. Facebook. How many of you have Facebook?
Almost everyone.
One at a time. Good. You can look for, believe it or not, there are job announcements that are put on Facebook, Instagram, LinkedIn. How many of you before today have heard of LinkedIn?
I have.
Okay. LinkedIn is basically Facebook for professionals. Okay. That's the professional networking site. So LinkedIn has tons of job opportunities that you can look for. Job newsletters. When I get emails about jobs in the area, I email the students about these jobs. These are what we call job newsletters. In part 2, I'm going to show you what a job alert is. How many of you realized or didn't know that you can search for jobs on Google, and Google can email you those jobs?
Oh, it's a new feature in Google.
Say it again, Andre.
It's a new feature in Google. It's just recently.
In the last few years, I realized that it's there. Maybe most, or if not majority of people who are in this position didn't know about it before. But you can search for jobs on Google, and you can filter your alert settings so that Google can email you as often as you need it to about the jobs that you're looking for. Company websites. If you know the type of career that you want to do, if you know the type of, if you know the company that you want to work for, go to that company's website. Usually a lot of companies have either careers or jobs or both in their website, either at the top or the bottom. Usually where you find the about us link. Somewhere along that line, you'll see careers or jobs or work with us. Look at company websites. They also tell you what they're looking for at the moment, or if they're hiring, or they might have an announcement about a career fair coming soon. But definitely check the website. Your resume. How many of you have a resume right now? It's okay. It's okay if you don't. Andre?
I do.
You do? Okay. Rebecca?
No, I didn't do.
No resume, and that's fine. Jung Kyung?
Yes.
Do you have a current resume?
Yes, sure. I have a resume.
Very good. And Shani?
I have a resume, but not in English. So my CV is, I think, in Hebrew right now.
No problem. When?
When what? Okay, sorry.
I just see when. Are you there? When?
I'll think of some.
Sorry?
Yes.
Do you have a current resume?
Yeah, we practice writing resume in class.
Very good.
Yeah.
Very good. Okay. So if your answer is yes, you're on the right track. You want to make sure that you edit your resume so that it's the right fit or the right match for the job that you're applying for, which is why you want to look at the job description and you want to compare what is this job asking for, what is the experience that I have, and I have to write my resume to reflect that. I have to focus on my skills, my experience, my achievements, just like this person has here. This person has problem solving, adaptability, collaboration, strong work ethic, time management, critical thinking, handling pressure. Very good skills to have. So these are the things that you have to include in your resume so that it makes that good first impression when the manager sees it. Does that make sense?
Yep.
Yep. So clear sections, right? So if you notice, this person labels every part of their resume: experience, skills, education. It's not all, mixed together or hard to read, right? But also, if you notice, it's very small letters, but at the top of the experience section, September 2017 to present. So you always want to go from the most current job and then back a couple of years, right? So I know that from a time standpoint, this is a very current resume, okay? And I'm assuming that they've written this resume to apply for an administrative position, because here, this person has an administrative assistant job and the next job is as a secretary. Maybe the next job that they're applying for could be another admin job or secretary job. But at least from what I see on the resume, this person is, it's easy to see how they have the experience to apply for that job. That make sense?
Yep.
Okay, so, and then let's say I'm ready to apply for this job, but before I do that, I do need to do my research, because one of the things that they might ask me in the interview, what do you know about this company? How long have we been in business? What is the company's history? How long has the company been around? Does anybody know when the Literacy Council started? Trick question.
Hey, Deb, do you remember? Is it something like 1963?
No.
Something like that. And I think we're up to what, 60 something years?
I was going to say the Barbs can't answer, but
Oh.
1963. Yes.
Oh, I got it.
Yay, she
There you
gets a
go.
prize.
Yeah, what do I get?
A one-on-one interview and or resume writing breakout room for one of our students next week. There you go. You want to know as much as you can about the company. What is their mission statement? What is the culture there? You know, is this a company that is very involved in the community? Is this a company that continues to be successful despite COVID? Do they allow you to work in the office or work from home? That's one of the questions that a lot of people are asking themselves when they're applying for jobs now. Can I work from home? Do I have to work in the office? Or can I do both? Does the company allow you to do that? Benefits, how much, what is the salary that the company is going to pay me for this job? Find out as much as you can about this company so that when they have the interview with you, you can talk about all of the things that you know, that you researched. And that's going to leave a really good impression because they see that you are committed. You're a committed person, not only to the interview, but you'll also be committed to the job, right? So when you edit your resume, oops, going backward. There we go. Okay. So apply for jobs that interest you. I think maybe in this room alone, we might be interested in different types of jobs, but apply for those jobs that interest you. It's okay if the job says you must have 3 to 5 years experience. Some of these jobs might not even look at your resume. Some of them will. It depends on what impression do you give them from your resume. If it grabs my attention, maybe this person is trainable. They might not have the experience, but they have education and they're very interested. Or maybe they also have volunteer experience. So there's a lot of ways that you can get around applying, even though you still don't have the experience that they're asking for, okay? Which is why it's good to be ready to learn and be trained. It might not be that you have the experience, but it's something that you're interested in. Do you work well with other people? Have you trained people, managed people? What is the goal that you have with this career? You know, if somebody applies for the job, do you want them to leave in a year, or do you want them to stay for the next 5 years? These are things that managers are thinking about as you apply for these jobs. From a motivational standpoint, if you think that if you see yourself being successful working in that job, apply for it. My mom would never allow me to speak negatively about a job. I would say, oh, I think I can't apply for this job. It says 4 years experience. Then she'd ask me, but can you do the work? I said, sure, I can do the work. I just need the training. Then apply. The worst that they can do is say no. right? So if I have 5 companies, right, and they all have these different requirements, and if I apply for these jobs with that mentality, no, I can't apply for that job because of this barrier or that barrier. The worst that can happen is that they don't accept me or that they don't offer me the job. But if I'm lucky, one of those 5 will say yes, and I won't know if they say yes until I apply. It's part of the job searching culture, I guess, here in the United States. I don't know if it's the same in your countries, because obviously when we compare United States to other countries, here we do ask for your resume. In other countries, they ask for your CV. So maybe it's not so much, I don't know. In your countries, is that part of the job application process that they say, if you want to apply for this job, you need 3 to 5 years of experience? Or does it just depend on which job you're applying for? What do you think, Rebecca?
Yeah, I think it depends on which kind of job apply for. Yeah. Mhm. Sometimes they don't need experience. They want they are ready to train someone. So
Andre?
Well, sometimes I hire technicians even without resume because people had no idea how to write resume. They didn't care to write resume, and I hired them only based on those experience. Just go through the interview, find out the experience, feel do you like or not like, could you work with this person or not in the future, and then you just give him proposal for the job, because you don't have any other opportunities, and especially those days, during those days, not many people want to apply for technicians professions. Most people or young people want to work in the office, comfortable with coffee, with nice screen, computer, everything, but nobody wants to work with hands.
Yeah. And some companies, industries, they'll change the way that they'll change their hiring process because they're desperate for workers. Right? Exactly. They've lost people because of COVID, and so now they're having a hard time looking for people who want to do those jobs. And whereas in the past they might have said, oh, this person should have this much experience, now they're realizing that, well, we need workers, but right now the job market doesn't have a lot of people with experience, but they have interest. They have academic background. They're motivated.
So Raul, one of the things that I'm seeing from people I talk to is that there are a lot of places that are having trouble hiring people, finding people. And so if you don't have all the experience, but you are willing to do things, or you're willing to do some training on the side on your own, I think that is one of those things that you can present to a prospective employer as a benefit to hiring you.
Yep. Absolutely. You were going to say something, Andre?
Well, sometimes, I'm in the process of searching job here in the United States, and I found the problem because I do have will to have additional training, but as long as I don't have invitation from the company for a position, I don't know what exactly training I need to take to addition to my experience and my knowledge and my education, to apply for the job. So as a person who is searching for a job, you are waiting until somebody provide you or ask you to join the company, and then you go for additional trainings and education. Otherwise, you just go around all trainings and you continue your life with trainings and you never get a job.
Yeah. Yep. That's the tough part about this process. And we can always benefit from additional training, but at some point, when does the training end and when does the job start? Like you mentioned. Any other tips or advice, Barbs?
Well, the only thing that occurs to me right at the moment is the thinking through the goal, the type of work, and sort of the match between the skill set and the type of work. If there's not a match, then that might open up the question of training. If it seems like the skill set is there for the job that's on offer, then maybe it makes more sense to spend the time looking for that type of job, and not to the point of the conversation. Sure, you're willing to, one of your skill sets might be quick learner. You can put that on your resume, but assuming it's true. But the point is just random attending classes, hoping that that's going to do something if it isn't targeted to a specific type of job that requires specific skill sets. Obviously, if you want a tech job and you don't know any tech skills, you're going to need to train up. But there are plenty of jobs where there's a lot more flexibility, and this job market is quite good for people who are looking. I mean, sort of in general.
Thank you, Barb. Okay, so let's say I'm looking for a job, right? How am I doing with my current job? If I'm still with my current job, it helps my productivity if I work with positivity. I have to be positive. I have to come to work on time and be committed, keep good relationships with my managers and coworkers, right? Because what's going to happen is if I apply to a new job, then here we go, circle back to the importance of having a good reference. They're going to ask about, they're probably going to ask you in the interview, and I don't know if they still ask you this question, they'll ask you, why did you leave your current job? Or why do you want to leave your current job? Right, so if you're leaving your current job and you're trying to go to a new one, all of us will have different reasons for why we want to do it, but you always want to leave your current job with the positive attitude or a positive connection with your previous manager or supervisor or coworkers, because especially if you're still going to another job that's within the same industry, you still have the connections from your previous job to be a job reference for you. You can still network with each other because you're working in the same industry. That make sense?
Yep.
So you don't, it's not that, well, I want to look for a new job, so I'm going to be lazy as I finish with this job, right? You don't want to do that. You want to finish strong and keep that connection going, because you're still professional. You still have a professional relationship, a network that you can continue to benefit from as you build your experience in your career. Okay. Does anybody have professional network contacts here in the United States, or do you have your professional contacts in your country?
I do.
You have them in Ukraine?
And in the States.
And the States. Perfect. This is another way to help you with your job search process. Your professional networking contacts can tell you about job fairs. They can tell you about job searching. We have a phrase that we talk about when we do job searching here, it depends on who you know. If you know somebody that works in an industry or in a job that you're interested in, that's kind of your way in a little bit, because you already have a family member or a friend or a professional contact that's already working there. And let's say that they've been working there for a long time, then if there's a referral that this person wants to make, then all the more reason why the manager should say, okay, let's talk to Andre, because he's worked with Rebecca for many years before. That make sense? You
Not
want,
always.
you want to make those contacts and connections. And of course, with COVID, you can make these connections both online and in person. They can, LinkedIn, as I mentioned, we're going to get to LinkedIn right after this. LinkedIn is that way for you to connect with people online, and they can share with you the same industry information that you're looking for, whether it's a job fair, whether it's a training, a conference, whatever it may be. Networking can really help you with the job search process. And if you've never, so how many of you have a LinkedIn account? Do any of you have it?
I do.
Rebecca?
But I don't use it, just I have an account.
Oh, we have to use it. We're going to have to use it a lot more. So this is what you'll see on the LinkedIn page. This is just different parts of my own LinkedIn page. You'll see a search bar where you can search for jobs or groups or classes. Of course, my network is the people that you're connected to. Here's the tab where you can look for just jobs. Like Facebook or some of these other social media apps, you can use messaging with LinkedIn. So let's say I have a friend that works for a company, and I just saw a job announcement for the company that my friend works for. I want to ask my friend a question. I can message that friend, just like I would message them a text message. Notifications like Facebook. If somebody posts something or to your account or your profile, it lets you know. There's also training classes that you can take with LinkedIn. There's good news and there's bad news. The good news is there's a lot of classes that you can take for training purposes. The bad news is they're not free. So it's free to use LinkedIn to make these connections, but it does cost you a small fee if you'd like to take classes on LinkedIn as training. So that's called LinkedIn Learning. And LinkedIn Learning is about $29.99 a month. But as long as you keep paying that fee, there are just, I mean, hundreds of classes about any industry where you can watch a training video, and it depends on what type of industry you're talking about. Some of them could be 1 hour, some of them could be 7 hours. I mean, the amount of classes that you can take on there are infinite. And like I said, it's social, it's Facebook, but for professionals. On Facebook, you share things with your friends and your family. On LinkedIn, everything is professional. So if you want to talk about trainings and classes and workshops, job opportunities, job fairs, job newsletters, anything job related, you can connect and network with people on LinkedIn. Okay, like like your resume that you have either on a Word doc or a Google Doc, you can also upload your resume to LinkedIn. And there is something that you can do on your profile that allows companies to message you because they see your resume and they can send you a message. Does that make sense? So Rebecca, if we start using your LinkedIn account today, we can go to your profile so that you can put it in your settings. I want companies to contact me because I'm looking for jobs. So after you upload your resume, if a manager is looking and is looking, and based on your resume, LinkedIn is like a computer, right? Based on your experience, the manager will see, they'll come across your profile and they'll send you a message. Not an email, they'll send you a message. And they will say, hi, I came across your resume. I work with this company and I'd like to talk to you about this job opportunity.
Wow. Dreams don't come true.
Yes. Okay. So in addition to the one-on-one contacts, there's also groups that you can be a part of on LinkedIn. These are just 3 groups that I follow in education. And so groups will share. So basically, this could be a group of 10 people. It could be a group of 500 people. Everything shared in this group is for professional development. So they share job opportunities with each other. They share professional development workshops there, training videos, job conferences, whatever it may be, as it relates to that group. Everybody in the group has access to those resources. That makes sense? So take advantage of LinkedIn. It's free. As I mentioned, if you want to take classes, LinkedIn classes, and they are $29.99 a month. You don't have to do it, but it's an opportunity there for you if you'd like to consider it. Okay. Okay. So to resume, when you're applying to jobs, think about what is the career that I want. Okay. Make the time in your schedule to apply for the job. Update your resume. Of course, we're here if you've come to our resume writing workshops, we've put you with one of the Barbs to give you feedback. So you want to make sure your resume is updated. We can help you with the cover letter as well. We talked about everything that you have online to search for jobs. Obviously, Facebook is one of them. Instagram is one of them, and obviously LinkedIn. So use social media to help you with job searching, not just to message friends too. Research the companies. Like I said, if you know the type of career that you want to do, you know the type of company you want to work for. If you go to that company's website, there will be a link on their page that either says careers, work for us, or sometimes it'll just say jobs. And if you click, they won't always have a job opportunity, but if you click on those, on any one of those links, it's different for different company websites. But if you click on there, they will explain to you what are the steps that you need to do to apply for a job with that company. Be motivated, be confident. If you're in a transition from one job to another, keep doing a good job. And then, of course, keep talking to people who are working in your field, working in your industry. You can talk to each other about what are those next job opportunities that you have. Okay. Next week, if you have a resume now, which most of you do, and you want some feedback on it, email me your resume so that next week we can put you in a breakout room with one of the Barbs, and they'll be able to tell you, here's what I recommend that you change or edit with your resume. Make sense?
Yep.
Or maybe you just need interview practice. Still bring your resume, and let us know what type of job you are interested in interviewing for, so that we can prepare to do a job interview for you for that job. So if Andre, for example, wants to, and this is just an example, Andre wants to work for Home Depot, then one of the Barbs or myself or somebody on the team will do our research for Home Depot, so that when Andre comes next week, we know how to do a Home Depot interview.
Oh,
Make sense?
Yep.
So let me stop here and ask you if you have any questions.
So far, so good. Thank you. Thank you for your time.
We're good?
thank you.
No questions at all? Or too many questions?
Or some specific questions.
Hmm?
Or some specific questions.
Some specific questions, sure.
Yep.
Go ahead.
Well, that's kind of what I meet during my search here is a lot of positions which I would choose to apply for requires security clearance, because I'm looking for property management position, and this DMV area, there are a lot of federal or government buildings. So if you go access to property management companies, you go across security clearance. As a new person in country, without your citizenship, you probably will not get, I will not receive the clearance. And another problem, if you go for technical positions, you meet a codes, specific codes which you use in the United States, and we have different codes and different measurement system in Europe, so it makes search complicated. And as you said before, reference, again, if I go across my reference in the States, it would be my co-workers with whom I worked about 15 years ago, or my relatives. And as you said, teaching could be a source of contact, but from opposite side, if I go for technical position, well, how teacher could present me, or how teacher could check and confirm my technical expertise if I go for technical position and put teacher as a reference. Yeah, teacher could confirm that he knows me. Yeah, this person exists. Yeah, it's probably his cell phone number, and probably his home address, might be his mail address, but technical expertise and technical knowledge which I have probably not be part of information.
Very specific question.
That's what I told you.
Wow. Let me start with any of the Barbs. Barb, you're muted.
What strikes me about Andres' comments is this is a more complicated set of circumstances, and might be worth a conversation offline, Raul, to just do some thinking about what's the core strategy, given where you want to go to, your career and your technical competence. What are the steps that you're going to need to take, and in what order? to get to where you need to go, given these barriers. Raul talked about barriers earlier, but this is a great example of other types of barriers that you're going to have to think through. I don't think it's impossible, but I think it's going to require some more sophisticated thinking, if you will. And I was just thinking, Raul, if maybe we could have a conversation offline about what might be some of the ways to start this process, consider some options, and then basically build a game plan for getting work in this country. I don't think it's impossible. I think you're offering a set of questions that are more complicated than for some new arrivals to this country. So that's what I would suggest, rather than sort of off the top of my head, have you tried this and that? I'd rather spend a little more time thinking about, okay, let's do some, take a look a little bit more deeply into what you're talking about, and then get back to you. You know, we're going to be doing next week. We can pick up the conversation then.
Okay, thank you.
Sense?
Yep, thank you very much.
I think also there's perhaps a little more that we need to know. So for example, the security clearance is one whole big thing, and that, you know, that may just be what it is. But for example, if you're going into a field where there is a lot of demand, and you have the technical skills, then really we need to figure out, exactly as Bob said, a game plan to get you noticed, because you have what they want. You just, you know, maybe it's not that you can tick off all these boxes. If, however, you're going into an industry which is already overloaded with applications, which I doubt at this moment, you know, then that again is a little bit different, because it might be more difficult to put you to the forefront. But I think, you know, we need more information, because it sounds as though if you have skills, there's often a way around things. You just have to think outside the box. You have to approach things differently. You know, maybe you don't go through the usual channels, but I feel like we need more information before we can, like you need a different game plan. I think Bob's exactly right. And we need to know more, and we need a little bit of a discussion, because on the face of it, there are barriers. But I'm a big believer in, like, you know, you need to be determined, and we can help you maybe strategize to work around those. But I feel like this isn't enough information to do that right now. We do need to, yeah.
Thank you. I do appreciate your advice. I'll send my resume and example of a cover letter, which I usually submit along with my resume for applying for the job. And then I'll see what you can suggest me.